Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel where we review anything and everything. And in this video, we are going to do a follow-up video to the Red elect Red Rex, even though the proper name is the electronic real field Tyrannosaurus Rex. We're going to call him Red Rex for short, and the Hammond collection Tyrannosaurus Rex. We did a versus battle between them, and the champion or the winner was the Red Rex, even though, as I mentioned in the video, technically based on the point system and scaling that I did, it could have been either one. And based off that same way that I came up with the Red Rex being the winner, it could easily be the Hammond collection as the winner for you if that's what you feel. But this is just a follow up and going over little highlights and little things that I noticed about certain things with the Rexes after the fact, because the Hammond collection for me is actually new, and I've actually only had him just yesterday in the moment that I unboxed him. So I didn't really have a lot of time to kind of feel around the figure, though I had enough time to see it and know it, and the points that I made still stand. But there are a couple of little things I just want to do follow-ups with in comparison between the two, even though it doesn't uh change the fact of which one I think is the winner, but it is just little highlights, if you want to say, of little things and little factors. So jumping into that, we're going to move our little ref or prize or man for scale. And first, I want to say and point out the fact that, so I used to always hear a lot of bad things about the eye of the um, Hammer Collection Rex. And give me 1 second because I actually want to get a couple extra lights on here because we aren't right now really able to see his eyes that much. So let me see if I can get a little bit extra light going on. So we got a little bit extra light here, but I didn't want to make it too bright and wash everything out. But so we'll just try to bring it a little closer so you could see. But the eyes are actually a lot better than what I previously would have imagined, because the fix that they did on the eyes really allows you to see the pupil a lot more than what previously thought. You could see here let me see, at this angle here, you could see the pupil. You can see it there. You see it clearly there. You can still see it kind of there, though it's a little bit of a glare. At that point, you can't see it that much, but a lot of angles, you could see it at a lot better than what was previously depicted on other videos in the past, where people were showing off the eye and they were like, I can't really see the the pupil that much. So that is a huge plus. And after realizing that, and part of this wouldn't have made a difference in the battle because I gave the head win to the Hammond collection regardless. But I will say that um, you know the eyes on the Hammond collection Rex are afterwards. Now the fact that when you have I'm bringing the Red Rex here for a second. When you have painted eyes, you get a more intense look. And it's funny because after checking out my previous battle with the other Rexes versus the Red Rex, funny enough, the Rex that I didn't like the most, which is the Dominion Rex, actually I think has some of the most intense eyes and some of the best looking eyes. And even though I don't like that Rex that much, but I say that to make note that painting the eyes can really give you a lot of personality in the eyes depending on how they paint them. Because I also had mentioned in a previous video that the epic roaring T-Rex, its eyes were very cartoony, being based off of the Camp Cretaceous cartoon. It really felt more cartoony and less intense and realistic. So and it gave it a lot more of a personality. So painted eyes really can convey that. But in the realm of trying to be more realistic, that's where glass eyes come into play, because glass eyes are going to always look more realistic because they're going to look wet. They're going to look like they are real eyes. And so with that being said, I honestly feel that the eyes are a lot better than what I originally thought. And yes, I really like the eyes, and I think the eyes actually, as a overall, are better than the Red Rex's eyes. I like the Red Rex's eyes for its intensity and focus. I don't think as painted eyes that they're better than the Dominion Rex's eyes, only because that Rex's eyes seem so focused with so much personality into them. It's actually crazy, and I don't like that Rex hardly at all. But it has so much. focus in the eyes. Now, I feel that the Red Rex has somewhere in between. It's definitely good. It's really good eyes. I think it's very good. It doesn't look as bad as say the Epic Roaring, because the Epic Roaring one looks very cartoony, and this one does look nice, and whatnot. And you have the dark paint coming around on the by the eyes and whatnot. But I think the eyes on the Red Rex are amazing. I think they're great. I think they're top notch. I think they're, for painted eyes, they fall into the realm as pretty much as good as you can get. There's no negative to them. Like I said, when I say that I like the Dominion Rex's eyes a little better, it's only because of the personality they convey, and not so much that they're done better. So as far as quality goes for the paint, this one's eyes are top notch in terms of there's nothing wrong with them. I mean, painted eyes are not that of a hard thing anyway, but they work. I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with them, and they work. But glass eyes are more realistic, and so I have to. Where before I said that I felt that it could be a tie versus the glass eyes versus painted, because there are pros and cons to both. Um, the cons to the glass eye was essentially almost entirely removed. The only con to a glass eye, in my opinion, is we never would have thought that until they did it in the first Hammond collection Rex, which was the pupil being too far back that you can't see it. In this case, they definitely fixed it, to at least like 85% fixed. So for the most part, the problem that you had is no longer the problem that you have. So I want to let that be known. So in that case, his eyes are just, they're better in my opinion now at this point. Even the angle that I'm looking at it now from where I'm standing, I can't see the pupil that much, but on camera, I know you guys can see it, and that's where it counts right now. Look at that. Head on straight to it, you could see it. So now the face, I want to say and highlight that the face of the Hammond collection, um, does have a bit more realism to it. And, I think part of that is because the more muted colors give it more of that realistic look, the little dots and everything like that. There's just something about it that just feels very like more realistic of a T Rex, where obviously it's something that's bright red is not going to feel as, you know, um, realistic in the way in our minds, because it's bright red versus a dull color. Dull color always seems to depict skin better when we think of real life, even though the truth is that's just kind of part of it is just a play on the way our minds work. Because if you've seen any kind of colorful lizards with scaly skin that's red or some bright color, it almost looks unreal to you. So in your minds, it's like you can't even believe it, but it is real life, but it looks unreal. Obviously, like I always said, the scale and detail on this is very nice, and it actually looks realistic as well, but it looks realistic from a different reason. And I'm going to get into a deeper at the end of, or closer to the end of the video, similar to what I did in the previous first video of all the other Rexes that I compared to the Red Rex. I'm going to tell you what would be my ideal if you could fuse these two Rexes together, because I think that would give the ultimate T-Rex. And I did that in the other video about taking the points that I like from each Rex. But in this case, the Hammond collection has so many great things about it, and the Red Rex has so many great things about it, that if they're fused, they definitely would be the ultimate T-Rex. But the colors feel more muted and more realistic on the Hammond collection. So the head does definitely has like, it looks like more realistic. It looks more like it could be the actual robotic Rex from the movie, just scaled down. You could it really feels like that. This one though feel looks realistic because the texture, not the texture, the material can be seen just visually. You can see the material. You can see that, and obviously, when I say the realism on the Hammond Collection Rex, I'm referring to the head, not necessarily the body. That's one thing I didn't really get into in the video, is that how the head is very muted on the Hammond Collection Rex. The body is a little glossy, where here the head is a muted is more vibrant because of the color, but it's a matte finish, and the body is also a pretty matte finish, like almost semi gloss, but it still has a more uh matte kind of tone to it over, say, the Hammond Collection Rex. But what I was just gonna say is this one has a realistic look to it based on the fact that you can see it and you know that the material is more softer. Even visually, you know that just by looking at it. There's with that kind of matte finish and something about it, you could tell it looks real. That might not seem like it makes sense. How can you tell that something that is rubbery looks more real? But I guess I would relate that akin to saying when you look at the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie from the 90s and you see them, you know you're looking at a physical thing that is a soft rubber material that in your mind you can translate to that. It's a physical thing. It's a something physical I could touch. I know that it's there. I know it's real time. So I have this idea that that's real. When you look at the CGI Ninja Turtles from the CGI movies, um, those ones, you know, when you look at it, okay, it's not real. I just looking at it, I could tell it's not realistic texture, that it's not there. Even as much as you try to make it good or not, it's not. And there's something how, just like I use that example and you know what I'm talking about, I kind of apply that to this. You can look at this and understand the material by the look of it. But I love the way that the details show up on the camera just so well. So that's what I want to say with the Hammond Rex in regards to the eyes and just it has more realistic look, even from the way the teeth are. Like I said before, since they're more individualized, they are more realistic. And the Hammond collection is going for a more realistic look overall. Um, Compared to most of the other Rexes. And so that's one thing I really just want to kind of focus and point in on, and which I like about, which is why I think they went with the real feel tongue that, like I said, was carried over from the Epic Roaring T Rex. But this tongue, actually, after comparing it, is actually a little thicker than the Epic Roaring T Rex's tongue. They're both equally good, but the Epic Roaring T Rex's tongue is a little more thinner, but still great. It's a little. It doesn't have as much weight, but it's almost the exact same thing, but just a little bit thinner. I could tell by the way it feels. They both have texture on them. I think that the Epic Roaring one has a little bit more texture. I think I can't remember completely, but they're both pretty much about the exact same tongue. So I'm just gonna call them the same tongue, even though there's slight differences. I had noted that the this could be the jaw muscles can be a strength and a weakness. But if you're going for a realistic look, and you want like a play model that you want to say is realistic, you put it on your shelf and you're like, it looks real. The the Hammond Collection Rex, the teeth look more real. Like I said, I prefer them to be a little sharper, but as I mentioned in the past video, but the teeth look more real because they're individualized. The tongue obviously looks more real in its real feel. The jaw muscles are definitely more realistic and have a real feel to them. And I actually really like them. I There is the fear that they could end up wearing over time, but just as is, just rating them on what they bring to the table, just as is, I really like them because they look realistic. And like I said before, I actually like the ratcheting effect when it comes to the jaws. A lot of people don't necessarily like that, but I do. Um, One thing with with the Red Rex, I love that with how the interior with the throat and how it goes back and it just gives you that dimension because the truth is part of having a realistic and like I said in this video I'm just highlighting certain things that I've noticed and pointed out over just kind of really like looking over them after the fact but also going towards the direction of features that I think add to a more realistic feel, which then later on we're going to go into, like I said, combining all the aspects that I think would make the perfect Rex. And that's going to be leaning more towards function and realistic as well. So, one thing I think that actually goes to the realism of this is him really just having this throat area here that's really one, you're giving him a proper throat that goes further down, which is increasing the overall body skeletal dynamic of the figure because it's not just an area that stops and doesn't go anywhere. You know, you're actually getting where here it just stops and you have that area back there just to kind of cover up because it doesn't go anywhere, and that's fine. But for the purpose of just play and displaying, but there's an enhanced realism in the idea that your Rex actually has a throat like a proper Rex would have, And that kind of little ring lining here is great because it provides that structure to it that you don't have to worry about. It holds itself together, being that you have this real feel skin that goes all the way down the throat. But it's also nice too because by having this and this very strong, though rubberized material, it still holds its form, yet is still soft. So it allows that the throat to be, you could imagine like a T Rex roaring as loud as it can, and the throat area here like shaking like that, like when it's roaring, and this is just like pulsating in the throat because it's the skin flaps are just moving all around. So having that soft skin just is great, and the fact that that reflects also in the inside, and having a full-fledged throat, essentially, obviously you're not having organs and this and that going down there, but essentially that's part of the realism, is having a throat that goes down there like that. We don't think of it like that. We just think of it as a play feature, but it actually is part of the realism because the actual T Rex that you want to depict as being more realistic would have a deep throat that it would swallow things whole, and all dinosaurs would have that. But it's just that it's putting that in a play feature here. I think it's something to really make note of. Um, Another thing that I didn't go too deep on at the time, I did with the first verse video of the Red Rex going against the other T Rexes, but not in the previous one versus the Hammond collection, is their paint job are both amazing paint jobs. But one thing I really like with the Red Rex is it's such a very faint, um, it's such a very faint color. I just realized something too. I'm actually, as I'm recording this, it's being monitored or and on a display that's very vibrant. So sometimes I think I'm seeing this through the camera screen a lot more vibrant than maybe what you guys are seeing. So I apologize for that. Now that I realize that when I start talking about how detailed it looks and whatnot. But in general, the paint on this one right here, I really like how, and I'm not talking about the quality of paint now, but just the way it's done. It's so um, faint that it blends so well, where the transitions of each mark feel so natural, so realistic. They don't feel like they're just, this kind of calculated pattern. And in addition to that, it's very much, even everywhere, it's very random. It doesn't feel like it's, for example, it doesn't really feel like it's just, okay, we got a stripe, 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 stripe. It's got a little spot here, here. They're just all over, and it just feels a lot more random. Yes, it's more heavily put on the back, which would make sense because it's purposeful in terms of, think of a T Rex and it's attracting a mate, whatever the case is. Let me back this up a little bit so you guys can see better. But it it definitely is, it feels very random. And now I know in the past people would always talk about the paint jobs not really going all the way to the end of the tail. I feel like in this figure it goes pretty far enough down the tail, whereas the regular standard figures for, excuse me, for the line would probably stop sometimes, like they would have a portion of the tail that usually stops right here, and then you'd have an extended part of the tail. So it would stop right here, and that would be it. And then you'd have the rest of the tail that has nothing. So this one has, I feel like, enough striping where it gradually ends at a place where it comes out long enough to where I almost feel like they didn't not put it here because they couldn't, because on the other mainline ones where you'd have like right here would be a disconnect to a portion of the tail. It'd be like a separate piece that's connected. That separate piece clearly had no paint on it, so it felt like a thing where we painted the main part of the body, and right where the two part of the tail separates, we're not painting it. And this one, since they went past that area where even if you had to say where this thing has the individual line is right here, you can see the seam line, they could have easily just said we're going to paint from here and not go here. So the fact that they went here, it feels so much more intentional that it stopped here. So I don't really knock it that some people might say, well, why didn't it go all the way? Even though it definitely went most of the length of the tail, I don't feel like it's unintentional. I feel like it was intentional. I almost feel like, and I don't remember if I mentioned this in the previous versus video with other mainline, I feel like it's almost done in a way where the person who created it, like I said, it's not a separate piece. So there's no reason to have done that just for the purpose of, oh, we're being cheap. I feel like it was done in a way of like saying, if a T-Rex was in a fight, they're probably going to get the end of their tail bit off. So why are they going to have coloration down to the area where their tail is vulnerable? And that naturally, this is the display area of the tail. I mean, of the body. From the head all the way to here is the display area of the body for the purpose of, attracting a mate. And this part here is obviously a little more declared for battle damage in a sense, like a T-Rex when they battle another T-Rex. It's probably going to get his tail bit off. It's probably going to be at this portion. I don't know if the tail regenerates at all, even a little bit at the tip, like some lizards do. But just in general, I think that you might even find like a lot of animals and whatnot in vulnerable areas may not be very color orientated because it's understood that that might be a vulnerable spot in the dynamic of that creature. Now, this doesn't apply to things like, say, big cats, maybe, but things like lizards that are very common for a lizard to have like a breakaway tail or the tail being the point where it expects to lose its tail or a portion of its tail. I could see that being the case. So that's what I chalk that up to. Now, the paint job of let me bring in the Hammond Collection Rex here. The paint job of the Hammond Collection Rex, it's it's very well painted. There's a lot of detail. The darkening on the knees, it's a little lighter on the back of the legs. This was obviously intentional, so it's not like a thing that was just coincidental because it definitely you just by looking at it you could tell it's intentional. On the bottom of the feet you have darker, and so the front it's lighter in the back. This is clearly intentional. So with that being said, it's definitely part of the detail job because it was intentional. The speckling of black spots all along the body, going all the way down. The tail has the striping all the way to the end. But here's where you could see, similar to what I was saying before, where though this is not like one of the mainline ones, this one has has a three-part kind of tail section, where the other ones have a two-part. The other ones would have like this portion here coming out where's the beginning of the tail, and this would be a full piece. Where this one, because of articulation, is this the beginning part of the tail, the middle part of the tail, and the end part. They gave it painting all the way to near the tip. Now, like I said, I felt the other one was done intentional, so I don't knock any points off of it. And I still think it looks nice. Could they have gone all the way to the very end? They could have, but I think they went far enough that I don't really knock it that much. I'm sorry for the focusing with my hand, but this goes all the way to the end, and then you can see clearly that you have this fine paint all along the bottom too, where it's a lot more bright, like a lighter color of tan, and it's going even to the back of the tail. It has a faded look that kind of comes into play, and it looks nicely done. All the speckling all along the sides, and then the heavy striping on the top. So, like I said, everything is intentional, which definitely gives it a nice quality and a nice, um, you know, realistic aspect to it in terms of just having so much going on. The paint job for the stripes look nice. There's nothing wrong with a animal that will have a very intentional stripe pattern, because sometimes we have certain big cats, well, most big cats that have spots and stuff like that just seem very random all over the place, more similar to the red rex, which feels more random. Well, this is more intentional, but there are some animals that may have something like that where it's more intentional and not as random looking. Maybe like something like, for example, a good example of that would be, if I'm not mistaken, I think like tiger sharks, for example, have stripes in a particular area and then not on other areas. And if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me in the comments. But if that's the case, and if my memory serves me correct, that would be more akin to something like this. We have these stripes here, which is cool. But that's also, like I said, I really like the fact that the red rex's patterns and stripes and blotches feel very random and very organic, and very faded, like they feel like they kind of fade into different parts, stronger in some areas, less stronger in others. This feels very just, it's a nice job because there's a lot of detail, but it definitely doesn't feel as random and as realistic in that regards. Um, Obviously, you have a lot of articulation in the hands, and also too by putting them on ball joints, you don't see the little connecting point like you see on the Red Rex back there for his thing. But I'm not knocking that. Like I said, we're out of the battle phase right now, but this is just a follow up. But now I just want to jump into, because I stretched the video way too long already, but I just want to point out some little things I didn't point out before. Now I want to go into, and after doing that versus battle, since that time, I actually ended up reviewing the Hammond collection Brachiosaurus. And there's some things that I realized from that, I learned from that because it has some real feel skin features as well along the neck, giving it a very premium neck. And so what I kind of came, it gave me more insight to if I could combine these two, there are some elements I would take from what was done in the Brachiosaurus, now knowing that that's possible. So, what would I do if I wanted to combine and have the ultimate T Rex of all existence from Mattel? First, we're going to start with this. I do not, I'm sorry, I'm not going to say the color matters. Sorry about that, you guys. Um, I'm not going to say that the color matters because that could just be preference. Some people like the muted look. Some people might like the red look. I know some people might think the red look doesn't make it look realistic because it's so bright. But then again, like I mentioned before, in some lizards, that is realistic. If you saw it in real life, you'd be like, it looks unreal, but it is real because it's right in front of you. For some lizards that have crazy colors, like even a chameleon, you'll look at those colors sometime and go, that doesn't even look real because your mind doesn't compute a lizard being so colorful. And then you see it and you're like, wow, it's amazing. So I'm not going to say that part matters. So I'm just going to really talk on the features. First off, with the head, the ultimate T Rex would have individualized teeth. I would prefer them to be a little sharper than this, but individualized teeth like this. They could be painted like this, or they could be more of a bone color that's kind of like that. But nonetheless, you know, individualized teeth will be part of it. A real feel tongue would be definitely part of it, and the real feel um, jaw muscles would be a part of it. Now, like I mentioned before, that could potentially be a weakness down the line, but we're not going to go on what could be bad down the line in this video. We're just going to talk about just what looks good right now. So having that would be amazing. In the figure, like it's going to be great because it looks good. That and the tongue looks good for realism. The teeth, like I said, individualized teeth looks good. I would take these type of individualized teeth, though, like I said, a little bit sharper, but I would take individualized teeth and I would orientate them like this, where they're a little more recessed inwards and you get a little bit of more lip, like on the Red Rex, because I really like that a lot. Like to me, that's a big thing. Other people might not think of it, but I think it's a big deal. So here you can see underneath his tongue. Now, what I would do is this also. Look how his tongue is, and they have it there inside the center area. I would lower that joint to be just above the bottom of the back of the throat, like on here. I would probably put it right here, a little like circular part that I could attach the tongue to right here at the base where this tongue is. And it may not be as long as the Hammond collection tongue, but it will come down and just fit right here. Now, one thing I just noticed too is the bottom of his jaw is not, because of the recessed teeth being, having the lip go around it, it makes his jaw look smaller, the bottom of his jaw. And I don't, it does look smaller, but it may not necessarily be smaller because it's just that this doesn't have the teeth on the outer lip, while this one has the teeth on the outer lip, giving more interior space to the bottom of the jaw. With that being said, I still like the idea of these teeth being like that. There's something about that to me that's more realistic. They're more within the jaw, and then you have the lips going around it. And I definitely think it's a nice balance in between. That theory of, does a T Rex have lips or does it not? This gives you kind of a very in between ground where the lips don't come over the teeth, but yet you still have them. So, like I said, my realistic depiction of fusing the both, we're going with this one's teeth. We're going with the real feel tongue and the jaw muscles. But I would put that real feel tongue back here. I would make it a little shorter. I'd make it a little smaller to fit within the scope of in between these set of teeth, because the set of teeth, like I said, are more recessed because we have lips. And I would do it like that. The reason why I would bring the tongue down like this, because I would give it the open throat. I would give it this kind of whole little framing right here, so that way you have that, gives it structure to its throat, and it would have a throat that goes downwards, and that he can eat things. I would do that. Now, here's where it's going to get tricky for what I am going to say, but this is how I would do things. Now, I would make a barrel system in the inside of something like this. So I would take something similar to the Hammond collection's body. You see, it looks like these round circles. I would try. I don't know the mechanics on the inside of this. I don't know if it requires it to be non-hollow and you have joints inside there, or if um it's able to like if it's hollow and you could have it where it's hollow. So I'm gonna say two depictions. If it can't be hollowed out like this one for the purpose of um having that articulation, then what I'll say is this. I love that. I love the ability to swallow figures, but obviously for a display piece, that's not going to be the most important part. If someone's making the ultimate T Rex for display, so what I would say is this: I would give it that circular opening, but then I would make it stop maybe about an inch in there, right where this part is, where that kind of circular frame is. I'd make it stop there, so that way you can see down in there, but then there'll be a part where it stops here, and that's fine. You'd make it maybe look like uh, muscle that's kind of closed in together, so it's tight. And it looks like there's a pinch where there would be a hole, but it's like tight together. Because obviously, um, I think your throat. I don't really know anatomy if your throat stays closed when you're not, swallowing anything or not like that. But anyway, so um, as far as your throat muscles and whatever the case is, but anyway, so I would make it stop there, and then, like I said, since this is going to be the ultimate T Rex for display purposes, what I would do is this. At that point, we would have the neck joints how the Hammond collection has, but I would make ratcheting because I don't want looseness to ever be a problem. So I'd have ratcheting where you have certain degrees of motion where I can move it sideways as a ratchet, move it. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to. I don't want to make my Rex super loose. But every direction you move it, it has a ratchet. Even the stomach, you can move it upwards to angle more upwards because this one can angle to upwards, angle more lower on a ratchet. Make it where it goes upwards, and that's a ratchet motion. Middle is one section, and then down is another section. So maybe you have three motions. From there, and that's going to be a bare minimum. No paint job, no nothing on it. You're now going to coat the whole thing with a real feel skin material that goes over it. It's not going to be seamed where it actually has the lines. It's going to go right over it. Now, previously, we probably thought that wasn't possible. And I remember in my previous video before introducing this battle between these two, I mentioned that you can't have real feel and articulation. But the Brachiosaurus for the Hammond collection has proved otherwise in the neck, how you have articulating points in the inside of the neck with a very dense, kind of loose skin around the neck that gives you room to articulate within the neck. So this will be the same concept for the entire body of the T-Rex. This whole thing will be no detail on it, probably a little smaller in most of these areas, other than say like the neck area you want to stay the same because like the Red Rex is going to be hollowed out just at least in the neck area to have that, not the articulating part of the neck area, but right here would be hollowed out. We have that frame like we saw in the Red Rex, just to have where it's got a little open area. From here, this could be a little more. I'm not going to say skeletonized, but it doesn't have to be as thick because you're going to put a layer of skin that goes all over it, and that layer of skin will go all the way through like that, how it is on the Red Rex, and then the legs can still be hard material. But I would give ratcheting to every single joint on the foot, including the bottom of the feet. I would give ratcheting. But like I said, real feel throughout all of this, going throughout the entire tail, just like the Red Rex. And that's how I would do it, and all the articulation would be ratcheting. And that would be my ultimate in terms of display. Obviously, I would go with feet. I wouldn't go to the extreme of the model feet they put on Etsy that you could buy separately, because not to say you can't do that, but say if we're just taking pieces that we know is already available to Mattel and something easy to do, I'd use the proportion of the Red Rex's feet. That's fine. Obviously, make sure that the scaling is correct on it. I mean, the scales on it are correct. But to me, that is completely fine in terms of the feet. Put those on this because at least you have proportionate toes. I'd be completely fine with that. And that would be to me. Oh yeah, and obviously the glass eye. And that would be the ultimate Rex to me. That would be the perfect display Rex to me, right there. And then if you wanted it to be the ultimate um, play Rex, you would do almost the same thing, except you would, I would say, keep the articulation in the legs, but with ratcheting, you would remove the articulation in the body because you would want to keep the stomach hollow to put figures in, and you would keep the ratcheting underneath the tail, but just you would just get rid of any articulation in the body, so that way it could be hollowed out. And then instead of it being where it's not hollowed out in our first ideal display one, the play one would be hollow here without articulation, so kids can play and throw humans down it, and everything else would be the same. Um, this one's tail is supposed to have a bendy material in it. I really don't do all that much bending with it because I don't want to mess it up. But like I said, the Brachiosaurus has showed us now that you can actually have ratcheting skeleton underneath the skin and then still pose it. And that to me is actually really nice. And so, yes, that would be the ultimate Rex if we had to compare them. I mean, I'm sorry, I had to put it together. But with that being said, I'm just going to finish off with saying we did highlight some of the features about them that I didn't really focus on before. And the Hammond Collection Rex is really nice for having a more realistic feel. Just looking at the face looks a lot more realistic as like a display model, as for you to put up as a collector's item, just to kind of display, maybe pose it. It's definitely more realistic with that glass eye, the real feel tongue, the jaw muscles and the teeth being individualized and painted to look like they're real and decaying, or have like decay on them or more worn. The whole head is just a more realistic head completely, period. There's just no way around it. The only thing that this Rex has that might feel or seem a little more realistic is just the material is a little softer, so it gives you more feel like on when you touch it that it's more realistic like skin. But nonetheless, because you hear tap, and that tap is different. But other than that, the look, this is very much realistic, and a lot of times people want to go with what's more realistic, and that is definitely more realistic. Where the real feel T-Rex is more realistic in the way it feels. So they both have aspects about them that are very realistic for display purposes. Obviously, the Hammond collection is better for realistic display of something that looks real. But they're both great. They're both amazing, and we're going to end the video there. Link's going to be in the description for you to affiliate links connected for you to purchase the Hammond collection on Amazon. Obviously, the Red Rex is not on Amazon. It's all a Target exclusive. And I'll put your comments down below, anything that you guys want to comment on in relation to the video. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.